Welcome to our show. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is something every country is working urgently towards. This includes health and education, reducing inequalities, and spurring economic growth, among many other things. But economic growth is possible only when we have a mentally healthy community. The 2018 report by NCRB states that 109 children get abused sexually every hour in India. And another report shows that 7 out of 10 children in India experience some form of adversity. These numbers are only going up. This isn't the stuff that economic growth is made of. These numbers are hard for us to understand the gravity of these numbers and how they connect to economic growth. For example, children who experience trauma and abuse, they are 5 times more likely to develop depression. They are 5 times more likely to have inappropriate sexual relations, 7 times more likely to be involved in violence. And these numbers are only going up. Now, how does this connect to economic growth? When the largest segment of our society is constantly fighting for survival on a daily basis, and only a small segment is actually thriving towards growth, then economic growth is not possible for a nation. And that is why there are many organizations who are working tirelessly with marginalized people, helping them get past their traumatic experiences. Welcome AKANKSHA Chandele of Am Wellbeing, who is one of the few trauma therapists in the country. AKANKSHA is in pursuit of
breaking generational cycles of trauma and abuse.
Welcome, AKANKSHA. We'd love to know more about your work. And more importantly, I know you're a trauma therapist. What does trauma really mean? People expect that trauma is something which is very acute, and that's what we understand of it.
Yeah, you're right. So essentially, trauma, if you look at it from a body level, it's fear, right? And we can be scared of different things. What happens is that, and when you're scared, when you are scared, or, you'd either run away from it, you will fight something that's making you scary, because there is also this idea of fight your fears. Some people choose to escape from fears. But what is scary for you, maybe not so scary for somebody else.
Correct.
So trauma is actually anything that puts your nervous system into that state of fear. That's why it's different for different people. That's why we can't say that only this particular kind of incident or this particular kind of experience can be traumatic. Anything can be traumatic if it puts us in that state of fear. What happens with fear, experiencing fear at a very young age, experiencing something shocking at a very young age, is that our nervous system is still building at that time. So what happens is that the body stores that fear. If we are exposing children, like you just said, there are so many kids who get abused and traumatized at a young age. It's literally in their foundation. The fear gets instilled in their foundation. And then we expect those children to kind of grow up, study. Now, if they're in a constant state of, we want to run, we want to get away from this, and then we stop them and say, no, 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 now you study math, now you learn this, now you become a good painter or a dancer, it's not going to happen. That's trauma. It prevents you from functioning at a basic optimal level. And that's why it's unique to everybody else. It's not in that incident, it's in the person experiencing it.
That's right. So trauma, basically, as you stated, can be experienced by anybody in any economic strata.
Yes.
But you are largely working with children from marginalized sections of society, and because they are...
Because just the way our nervous system can go into a state of fear, it can also come out of that. Now, these communities that are, that do not have enough resources, be it economical, social, cultural, they don't have anything that will regulate their nervous system back into optimum functioning. And that's where the trauma goes on generation after generation, because there's nothing that's actually countering the impact of that trauma.
What do you mean by going generation after generation?
You know, when you go to a doctor, say you visit a doctor for sugar or diabetes or anything like that, they ask you about family history, right? Did your father have it? Did somebody in your family have it? And that's exactly how trauma also gets transferred. If it's a physiological change that happens in your body, your heart is pumping faster to keep up, your lungs are working twice as hard to keep up, the hormones are pumping as faster to kind of, you know, secrete the right juices so that you can counter that state of experience, that fear, that whatever it is. So if that is how your body is wired, and then you reproduce, then you come from that state of mind and you raise a child, even if it's not your biological child, you're you're just transferring all of that.
Same thing for the...
So just the way, you know, we talk about physical illnesses that get passed down and there is a genetic disposition, in the same way trauma also gets passed down from nervous system to nervous system.
My goodness. Would have ever thought that this could actually be inherited?
Yeah.
Wow. I know you have a private practice, but why did you choose to build a not-for-profit organization and actually go all out of your way to work with children who cannot afford this?
You know, like most social entrepreneurs, I think there's always a personal motivation. I'm a survivor of multiple instances of childhood sexual abuse, and but I'm also somebody who had enough safe adults, who had enough safe, you know, ecosystems around me to sort of mitigate the impact of what I had been through. And like I said, when I entered that space in my first job, I realized that yes, I understand why or what these girls have gone through, but I couldn't see anything that could have been mitigating the impact of what they've been through. So I think the personal motivation was that I know what it's like to some extent, but I also know what healing is like. And what I wanted to create was those healing, those safe spaces, so that, you know, like I said, so that, you know, that doesn't become the story of that child. That abuse or that adversity is not the story of the child.
What does your program really do? If I was to get a deep dive into it.
My team comprises only of therapists, and we are the ones who are taking care of all other parts of it. We started like any other mental health organization with direct intervention, where we went into the community and we provided individual therapy. Then we expanded on taking it at a group level, where we understood that, you know, we need community level interventions. So we started a program on group interventions, and then we reached a stage where we realized that we are this many and the Indian population is this much.
Yes, that's
And
true.
the problems are only getting wider and wider. And I think when COVID happened, we actually saw the magnitude of, because that was collective trauma, right? Everybody went through it, irrespective of gender, social status, economics, cultural, whatever it is. And I think that's when we realized that we need to create more people doing what we are doing.
Right.
So yes, we do direct intervention where we are providing one-on-one therapy. We work on community levels where we are providing interventions for an entire community. And we are also training mental health professionals, healthcare professionals, community lay workers, anybody and everybody in being trauma informed, in having that lens that what it is to be a safe person for somebody who's gone through adversity.
What do you mean by trauma informed? Like to make somebody, and is it only mental health professionals or is it people like me who's a parent? What would it mean?
Everybody. It would actually mean everybody. And to put this thing, I think anybody from the, you know, young adult population, starting at adolescence and young adult, I think that's when you can actually start becoming trauma informed.
Really?
And, you know, at what age do we start teaching CPR, first aid?
It's true.
At adolescence, right? Class 8th, 9th
Yes,
is,
absolutely,
I
you
remember,
can.
you know, that's when we taught them. We can teach being trauma informed right at that moment, right from very basic, simple first aid like steps to supporting people who have mental health concerns like depression, like anxiety. How do we support them?
Give me an example of what one could do. Like, let's say there is an adolescent and you put them through a trauma-informed course and they are in a situation. What kind of situation could they help mitigate and how?
You know, it's interesting you asked that. We actually have a peer-to-peer program that's running for adolescent girls, and only recently they lost lost a friend to cancer, and a child who is trauma informed, who understands what grief is like, what the family of that young boy must be going through, will be able to provide that kind of support. Which is such a common thing we see, that when there is grief, people don't know how to respond.
They don't.
And just by, simple things like being there, asking how the person is, supporting them in little ways, we saw those young girls supporting the family members of that young boy simply because they could understand what they could empathize. They could sit there, be listeners. They could see what the person must be going through and provide that kind of support.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
And if children learn this at a really young age, they grow up to be empathetic individuals.
They're kinder and more compassionate.
What about teachers, for example? Like, I mean, I have a son going to school, and, one of the wonderful things I love is that the teachers are very, very connected to all the students and very willing to partake in counseling children along with the parents, which is quite amazing. But I'm sure that doesn't happen in every school. That's rare, maybe. But how don't teachers join your program?
See, that's the thing, right? When you also said that if everybody is busy surviving, who's thriving? Who is to say that these teachers, these sets of parents have not already gone through their share of experiences and are still struggling? We have a partner organization that works with adults who are struggling with addiction and homelessness.
Right.
But I think the most rewarding aspect of that has been the support we've been able to provide to the team. Because it's the team that's looking at 20, 30, 50 adults struggling with addiction, homelessness, and so many other things. So
must be quite hard on them.
It's so hard on them. And I think they are the ones who most appreciate the support that we have to provide. So
similarly for teachers.
Similarly for parents. A dysregulated nervous system cannot regulate another person.
So tell me, what was this COVID helpline project with the government like? I mean, what were your learnings from it? What was your experience? It must have been intense.
Yeah, it was very intense. We started right in April 2020. So it was right at the beginning of when the lockdown was announced and COVID was on full throttle at that time. It was incredible. I think the speed at which the particular government department worked with us, and very enthusiastic, very motivated, and the amount of support we got from people. Like, we rolled out volunteer forms and people just signed up.
My goodness.
And to support mental health workers, counselors, school counselors, some teachers who had some counseling degree. Of course, we had to, kind of filter out a lot of people, but we did trainings immediately, and one of our lead trainers was in Bombay and somebody was somewhere else. So it was amazing. And from that one government support, we were able to then go on to talk to different governments, partner with different similar like-minded helplines. At one point there was a medical helpline and a mental health helpline that came together, and it was intense. And I think it was only in November 2020 when I actually realized that, okay, there is a pandemic going on. Because for me, those few months were just about the helpline.
What is the other thing the government can do to aid or should change in the social sector landscape for better impact?
Honestly, I think the government needs to do its share of research. They're providing support. Yes, I wouldn't say that there is no support. They are providing support, but that's a very surface level support. The ground reality, the gravity. You'd look at mental health, for instance. we have like 1 or 2 big government mental health facilities in the nation, and everybody is basing all of their research and data on what's happening there. A lot of that is outdated. There is no trauma informed lens. People are not looking at what actually is required. So I think at that level, the government definitely, I feel, has the capacity, because people are there to support it, to go into the inner circles of what is actually happening, bring out the data, bring out the stories from there, and then create programs that will actually make an impact and will not just be numbers.
The government needs every non-for-profit support, right? And then we hear that the government is cracking down on, NGOs and XYZ, and the compliances are becoming stricter, the norms are becoming stricter. What is the real story? Is it good? Is it not good? Or is it good, but it could be a little less strict? What is it?
The strict policies that have come around FCRA and so many other things is basing on certain NGOs. The number of NGOs that are operating, I don't know the actual number, but it is huge.
Yes.
Right? Not all of them are compliant, of course.
Right.
But you're basing it on certain NGOs, basing it on whatever data that you've been able to acquire, and then forming these guidelines without realizing that at the root, what is going to get impacted.
Right.
I think with these strict laws, a lot of smaller entrepreneurs, enterprises like myself, have actually shut down because their funding got stopped, because a larger NGO stopped getting their funding from international sources, and the bottleneck effect happened, and so many people who are doing good work, that gets impacted. So again, my stand is this only, that they don't know the full story. So they're just acting on whatever they do know.
That's right. And I guess it's hard to know the full story unless you actually invest in research and finding out what's really happening
Actually
on ground.
listening to the people.
And listening to people and really and then knowing what's really happening on ground.
Yeah.
So Akanksha, what do you mean by when you say your impact, your organization's impact? Could you elaborate a bit more on that? Like you said, mental health is not a tangible thing. Then how do you measure it?
So far we've been measuring it with stories,
Okay.
with the number of hours of sessions that people have attended. But all of this while we've known that that's not the way. That's just something we actually put together to communicate it to other people, that wherever we are looking for support, be it in terms of marketing or funding, wherever. What we are actually now doing is we have opened up a research wing of our own, wherein we are trying to put together frameworks that how do you take something that is so potent, but it's all story, it's all art based. You see it. How do you one of our girls told us that, oh, this time I could go for a job interview and I was not scared.
Wow.
We don't know how to quantify that because another lady also in the community told us that she was, having trouble with her in-laws, and now she's able to find some respect in her own house. How do you quantify that? So we are also trying to, see what is applicable for our communities in terms of impact. How do we make that acceptable? There is a wave of change. We are looking at, everybody is looking for stories more than numbers. So we are trying to tap into that. Just in terms of numbers, I would say only this year we've been able to say that we've reached about 1 lakh plus lives.
Wow.
And this is not including whatever secondary, tertiary impact that we might be
So
having.
this is direct
This
beneficiary?
is direct impact that we can see.
Wow.
That we have been able to touch upon. There are about almost 4,000 people that we have trained. So those are the numbers.
That's amazing.
But
That's quite amazing.
yeah, but I think the impact that we see, that we take away, is that we are breaking that cycle of trauma. So if somebody's father was abusive and then that teen turned out to be using drugs, and then their siblings turned out to be emotionally deprived, by plugging in this kind of support that we are providing, we are saying that we stop it there. It stops with you. You're not going to pass that trauma on. Yes, there will be suffering. We are not in a utopian world. There will be suffering, but we can contain the pain. We can have ways to just hold space for that suffering.
Before we close the show, I do want to know if there are any small tips you would want to give to the audience, on how they can make a difference, when it comes to mental health and trauma, and not just for themselves, but also people around them. Because I guess a lot of people don't even understand where to begin.
Yeah, yeah. So we are called I Am Wellbeing for a reason, right? It does begin with I. So I think my ask for people also is to, your body is talking all the time. Your nervous system, your heart rate, your everything is talking to you all the time. Just listen. That migraine, that acid reflux, that sweaty palms, anything and everything is talking. Just pay attention to what's coming up for you. I think that's step one. We go to seek support, we go to even focus on it when it becomes a problem for us. But
When it
our
becomes
bodies,
chronic.
it becomes chronic, it becomes challenging to do our work. But I think our body is talking all the time. We just have to listen to it, provided it with the kind of safety, the support. There are a lot of resources out there, and it's an open thing that I can put out there. If you don't know how to listen to your body, we are right here. Yeah, we are right here. There are more people like us. Talk to someone. You don't have to seek support when you have depression.
Yeah.
You can start noticing what's happening inside of you, start communicating with yourself, and you'll know what's happening. And as you build that safety for yourself, it becomes so much easy to build that safety for people around you.
True. Because then you're not volatile when they are going through difficult times.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Akanksha. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and it was a very informative conversation. Actually, I learned many new things, and I'm sure
I'm
so did
glad.
our audience.
Thank you so much.
So our nation is in the loop of trauma. And I urge you all to take the first step by being kinder to yourself, more compassionate to yourself, and look after your own mental health. And that's when we can all start looking after each other and build a nation which works towards powerful economic growth. On that note, namaste and goodbye till next time.